I got the L, the big L. I got stuck here. And it's kind of embarrassing, to be honest, because this is somewhat of a manicured trail, but I wasn't paying as close of attention as I should have. So I definitely slipped off into a ravine and almost crashed TDXJ. So today we're gonna be talking about it. We're gonna talk about why I made the mistake that I made, what I could have done to avoid it, and the tools and equipment that I will have with me from now on. And I hope you guys can learn from it. I know I did. I will not lie to you guys. I am somewhat embarrassed to make this video because on the back of my Jeep, big and bold on the glass, I have a sticker that says, "I may get lost, but I never get stuck." And I did, in fact, get very stuck the other day on the hill that's right in front of me. So I wanted to come down here and discuss it because there were a couple things that led up to this situation that 100% could have made it avoidable. Now, 2 times in my life, I've gotten stuck And it's ironic because of the sticker on the hatch of my Jeep. Now that sticker was a gift that was given to me years and years and years ago. And it's just a funny sticker. It doesn't really mean anything. It was a gift. I put it on my glass. But 2 occasions in my life, I've gotten extremely stuck with my Jeep. And both times that sticker is this beacon of, haha, I told you you would get stuck. And in fact, the one time I got stuck in Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains, that was the first thing that the guy that actually saved me read out loud and started chuckling to himself. So you never get stuck, do you? It's like, you know those times. We've all had them. We've all had those embarrassing moments where we might have advertised that we can do a certain thing and then we failed miserably. And then, rightfully so, the people that come to help us get to make a little bit of fun of us. Well, it happened again a couple days ago. Middle of the week, we were down here filming, and Brenton and I, as we were leaving, we decided we were gonna film our vehicles exiting this hill because it's extremely steep. It's kind of like a goat path up here. And it's fun. It's a cool area to just explore. I like to go off-roading and things like that, but the main priority for that day was to come down here and film some of the products that I make at my company. So we weren't really planning on doing any hardcore wheeling, but we found this trail. I need to back up for a second because I don't want to make this sound more epic than it is. This was not hardcore wheeling. This is a somewhat manicured path that just happens to be extremely steep. No mud or anything like that. I don't want to set the wrong expectation here. But at the end, we decided we were going to film our vehicles going up through. So I filmed Brenton's FJ going up over the hill. And then at the end, he filmed my Jeep. First problem with this entire exit strategy was we didn't have proper spotters. And it's something we take for granted. You know, we think we're going to go out in the woods and just have some fun. And we're just going to explore a little bit. There's no stakes. There's no risk, right? It's just a simple path. What's the worst that could happen? So neither Brenton nor I had snatch blocks. We didn't have any recovery straps. We didn't have soft shackles. We didn't have tree savers. We had nothing. Now he had his winch on the front of the FJ, which is actually what ended up needing to be used to keep my Jeep from sliding backwards and rolling into this ravine. So we had the winch, but we didn't have any other recovery gear. So naturally, as I'm talking about this, the first lesson that I want to just portray to you guys is never take for granted the fact that you think it's going to be a simple trip. I do that way too often. When I prep for hardcore trips, I've got all kinds of different recovery gear. But when I'm just bouncing around the mountains up here in southeast Pennsylvania, I just go, sometimes alone. I just take my vehicle, point it in a direction where I want to go, and it's never bitten me quite like it did the other day. I almost lost my Jeep, and I know the pictures and the videos aren't going to show that really well because they never do, but as I'm looking at this hill up here, it's about a 50-foot drop with probably a 75-degree incline going up to it, and my Jeep was right at the top of that, and it's just loose rocks all the way to the bottom. Now the tree that was beside my Jeep would have saved it from rolling over for a period of time, but with the steep angle, it would have just crunched the entire side of my Jeep. So it resulted in somewhat of a lengthy recovery that was a little bit complex and needed the right tools for the job. So right away, Brenton and I probably should have stated as we were exiting, do we have the proper recovery gear? And the answer was no. So either one of two things had to happen. Instead of getting engrossed in filming, we should have been spotting each other much better. Now his FJ, as shameful as it is for me to admit, made it to the top with no issues, and his locker's not even working right now. And right now is about the time where he'd be like, 8-track, 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 8-track.
And as you know, I am the average Broverlander, so I do use a rooftop tent. So just know who you're talking to, right? Read the room, okay?
Like, yeah, the 8-track's so cool, man. It made it up, and my Jeep did not. So 0.1 for the FJ, -1 for the Jeep, unfortunately. But we should have told each other, hey, either we have to pay more attention as we're spotting going out, or there's this beautiful flat path right in front of me that I'm looking at right now that just goes down the mountain, and it still requires 4-wheel drive, but it's not as sketchy as the one coming out here. So the second point that I wanted to make is when you're traveling with buddies, just make sure everybody's equipped, because we take this kind of stuff very much for granted. It would have been super easy for us to shove a couple little pieces of gear in our vehicle and have a way to recover me without having to call a buddy and have him get his Land Rover up here and have 2 winch points and all this other stuff. And I guess I'll describe kind of how we ended up getting the Jeep out. And unfortunately, I didn't film this because we were engrossed in saving my Jeep, thankfully. But we ended up using a recovery point on a large tree, hooked a tree saver, soft shackles, snatch block, and then hooked a 10,000 pound winch to that. So we were essentially able to pull perpendicular to the Jeep. And the reason I like that kind of a method of recovery is it was able to drag my Jeep up onto the trail from the back end. Brenton was positioned at my driver's side up at the top of the hill, kind of pulling at an angle. And what that means is, as I was trying to accelerate forward and my locker was doing its work and I was turning really hard to the left, the recovery strap, or I should say the snatch block on the left, was pulling perpendicular. The back end of the Jeep was getting pulled away from the tree and the front of the Jeep was getting lifted up out of the ravine. So at the end of the day, once we got set up, it was a fairly simple recovery. But there's a couple things that flashed through my mind in that moment. One, I had to unbuckle in order to even get out of the Jeep to assess the situation because we had no more spotters. Brenton was tied up, locking the Jeep down with the winch. Because of that, my seatbelt locked and I had no way to get buckled back in. So we were recovering this Jeep that was leaning like this. I couldn't get buckled in. I had tons of loose gear in the back. Think about that. I had all the fireboxes for my company, all kinds of sharp metal, probably about 800 pounds of gear in the back of my Jeep that had no off-roading purpose, but it could have been flying around as we were recovering the Jeep, or if it would have rolled, because if we would not have been able to recover it or the recovery failed, that Jeep would have rolled down the hill. There's no doubt about it. So I would have been not buckled in, loose, sharp metal flying around, and I would have definitely been injured. So this is high risk. It was a simple situation that seemed like it was no risk. Yet here we are saying that could have ended very badly. Now to end that story out, thankfully, I've got friends with recovery gear. They were willing to help. We got the Jeep out safe and sound, not a single scratch on it. But it's made me rethink how I'm going to approach this kind of stuff going forward. First thing that I'm gonna do next time is pay much more attention to that trail as we're exiting. A simple walk up the trail would have been sufficient for me to know that under about 4 to 6 inches of leaves were loose rocks that as soon as you touched them, they slid down that ravine. And that's ultimately what kicked my Jeep down into the hole. The other thing would have been to not be as distracted with the filming. And I love to film stuff. I just filmed this intro for this video and I really enjoy doing that kind of stuff. But if it distracts me from safety, I should probably be paying much closer attention to the safety, less attention on the filming. Or if I'm going to be filming something that's pretty cool or epic, I should have the right gear on tap to get me out if I get stuck. The other thing is I'm gonna bring this gear with me much more. My straps, shackles, snatch blocks, things like that. I'm gonna bring it much more often on my trips, even simple trips, because even if it's not my vehicle, we could come across somebody that might need our help. And I'm really good about that in the winter, really good about that on overlanding, off-roading trips, but on my day-to-day, not so good about that. We think about the things that I carry with me every day, and this little tote that I set down on the ground that I'm sitting on carries all of my medical equipment. I go nowhere without my medical equipment. And that's because in my life, I've had situations where I've come first to an accident and I've had to help and administer first aid and things like that on multiple occasions, some pretty nasty accidents. And it ingrained in my brain that no matter what, I always travel with medical gear. But recovery gear, apparently I've just not been scared enough up to this point in my 31 years of life. And thankfully, it was this little mishap that's gonna change my mindset. And I'm gonna be working at building some interior organization for this kit. And I'll show you guys that as we go forward in the YouTube channel. But I wanna leave you with this. No matter what you're doing, no matter how simple you think your off-road adventure is going to be, do yourself a favor and make sure you have people who know where you are, some recovery gear to get yourself out, or even just to secure the vehicle. Simple come along and a synthetic rope or whatever, a wire rope, doesn't really matter. Simple hand crank come along would have been all it would have taken for me to make sure that that Jeep could stay put for another day if I couldn't get anybody up here to recover it in that moment. It's things like that that we got to think about so that we don't get completely stuck in the middle of nowhere or hurt or destroy a vehicle that's like my Jeep. My Jeep's kind of iconic. I use it for my business. It's my pride and joy in my vehicle world, and I enjoy showing it to people and teaching people about it. So I need to protect that investment as well. So never take that for granted, guys. Use this lesson, this entertaining lesson, and a little bit of my embarrassment to remind yourselves, always make sure that you have the gear and the tools on hand to get yourself out of a bind. And if you ever question it, you're not sure if you can go up the path or up a trail or up whatever, scope it out, have a buddy spot you, and if you feel uncomfortable, don't even do it. It's just not worth it. It's not worth your safety, it's not worth your vehicle. We like to push the limits, we like to explore, but ultimately we've got to be safe. So I'm curious what you guys think. So if there's anything else you guys want to know about the recovery, if there's other topics you want me to cover about my Jeep, about the gear, the stuff that I bring every single day, I would be happy to make videos about any of that, but I rely on you guys to leave me comments down in the comment section to let me know. Gives me some ideas, helps me make videos that are relevant to what you want to see. Last thing I want to do is just create videos that have no purpose. So appreciate you guys for tuning into this one. Hopefully you had a good little laugh at me, at my expense. I'm okay with that if you walked away with some good lessons, but we'll catch you in the next one, guys.